Out there in Liberty Land? No, let's go. What's wrong?
Now.
Okay, hey, we're on air. What's happening out there, you lucky libertados? Welcome to another stirring episode of the Scottish Liberty podcast on Thursday, the 8th of December, 2016, with my co-host,
Antony Sammeroff.
And me, Tom Laird. What's on the agenda today? Well, apart from a delicious smoothie, again, once courtesy of Sammeroff, we have quite delicious. This one is what's in it? What's in the smoothie?
Apple, banana, orange, Vita cocoa, half a lemon.
Half a lemon. It's quite. It gives it a bit of zing. It's zesty,
and orange
and
as well.
It reminds me a little bit of cremola foam. I remember having that as a kid. Who gets it anymore? I don't know. But anyway, so we'll start off by saying.
Do you get it anymore?
I've never seen cremola foam for years, but apparently you still get it, and I wish I knew where, because I love this stuff. It's probably hideously bad for you, and will give your children 3 heads or something, but it tastes really good. So, do I have a right to this smoothie, Anthony?
Well, you've got a right to it because I gave it to you. I bought the oranges, bananas, apples, Vita cocoa, the half lemons.
Okay, I didn't even contribute to making it, and I probably won't even have the goddamn decency to wash the glass when I'm finished with it, because that's the kind of selfish, self-interested individual that I am. Individualist. Totally. So, I mean, what else would you expect from a capitalist swine like myself? What I was going to say is, the reason I'm asking that is apparently the SNP have decided that they want to include in a future Scottish constitution the right to food. Now, I was having a quick look through the internet, because obviously you've got like the right to food. Well, who would buy it? Why wouldn't you just go down to the local, government institution, whatever it was, and say, I demand that you feed my face right now, and it better be with something I like. But apparently the right to food, according to the United Nations, doesn't mean that the government has got an obligation to hand food out. It just means, figure it out, that you have a right to, nobody has a right to deny you food and sustenance. Let's suppose it was a good idea. Why do we really need it in a constitution? I mean, why should that be in there as opposed to anything else? I mean, should anybody have the right to deny you your property? Should anybody have the right to deny you an education? Should anybody have the right to deny you anything? So, I mean, I'm not sure what they actually mean by a right to food. What do you think of it?
Well, if you're saying that it's not the case that they're saying that people have the obligation to feed you if you're poor or whatever, I mean, we should maybe talk about what would be wrong with that. I mean, It seems on the face of it a very compassionate thing to do, to say, look, no one's got the right, no one should have to starve to death. First of all, in an industrialized nation, does anyone really starve to death? Unless it's a case of deliberate neglect from parents. I mean, no one really goes starving in Western countries. There's plenty of places that you can go to get free food if you are in need. There are services there to cater for the homeless or the needy that will provide them with food. But this question of...
But apparently people are going hungry.
Right.
What would be the difference?
Well, the thing is, what would be the difference? People are going hungry. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. When you take a snapshot view, you don't know why people are going hungry.
Yeah.
Are they going hungry because the state has intervened so much in the housing market, prices of rent and mortgages sky high, and so they couldn't keep up the payments? Are they hungry because they
well, first of all, what do the left really mean when they say people are going hungry? I mean, like, I went hungry. I'll go hungry regularly. I mean, it's like this couple of days I'll come home, I haven't had a chance to eat anything during the day, and I go to bed and go, I'm quite hungry, but I'll just wait till tomorrow. So I went hungry.
Right.
But
that's not exactly what.
I don't think that's what they mean.
By going hungry.
They mean that they're going hungry because they can't afford to buy food on that particular day.
What is wrong with saying if someone is in that position, the government has an obligation to buy food on their behalf?
Well, first of all, where would they get the money to buy the food? They would have to take that money. The government. Well, I don't know if Nicola Sturgeon was going into her own handbag and taking out money from her own purse, and then going down to the supermarket and buying food and giving it to people. I guess I don't have a problem with that.
No,
you know, that's if it's her salary that she's using. But if she's not using that, she's using taxpayers' money. That means she's robbing Peter to pay Paul. She's taking money by force, because that's the only way. Well, it's not the only way government can get money, but by and large, government raises taxes by using the threat of force behind it. If you do not pay your taxes, we will punish you. Initially by summoning you to court and fining. If you don't comply with that, we will eventually send our police to lay hands on you and arrest you and forcibly put you in prison if you do not pay your tax. And if you resist the police, they will use violence against you in order to take it. And that's really what it comes down to. So when you say that the government should feed people, then that would lead to people, why would I buy food if I have a right to it? That kind of right to it.
Right, so it's a thing that's going to spread. So the thing is, this is one of the things where people will say, well, libertarians don't care about the poor, because they wouldn't even say that food is a basic human right. Well, from our point of view, you don't have a right to anything that someone else has to produce. So you can't say you have the right to that food if someone else has to actually grow the food and make the food and things like that. You can't, if you're not allowed to go up to that person's house and steal that food, then why should the government be given any rights that an individual does not have? A government is simply made of individuals. What gives them the right to do things that those individuals themselves have not got the right to do? And we would say nothing. Now, food is not particularly expensive, but it's worthy to add that because we've got all sorts of restrictions on buying food from third world countries, Africa and South America and other places, we're actually paying significantly more for food than we even would be paying on a true free market. And it's worse for the people in those countries because they really need the economic activity to get their economy going. So food's not expensive, and it could be even more cheap on a free market. And in an advanced economy such as ours, there's no reason why anyone should have to go hungry. We don't need the government to come in and mandate that, because that's just a step down the road to serfdom. Mm-hmm. When the government starts saying, oh, people have a right to this, a right to that, it might seem relatively benign, but in the long term, what they're actually doing is expanding the remit of what is considered fair game for government to interfere in. And soon you get things like, oh, well, we need to nationalize the farms because, people don't want to give away their food for free. So
next step, nationalize the supermarkets.
Yeah, so it might seem relatively benign. If you want to feed the poor, that's a fantastic thing. I don't think anyone should have to go hungry in this country, or anywhere actually. But government, this is a matter, a social matter, and not all social matters are matters for the government. We are society, you and I are society, and it's our job to make sure that these things are dealt with collectively, and for individuals to choose what cause they think is most important, what change they want to see in the world, and champion that cause or get active in that cause. Not for government to start coming in and, as you've said, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But I mean, there's lots of instances. I mean, I was reading recently about an incident in it's in America, but I'm sure similar things happen here. Where there was somebody in New York decided to feed the homeless, and it was the government who clamped down on it. Because they said, well, you're not conforming to certain regulations. So, well, look, I'm feeding homeless people here. I'm not even charging them any money for it. But no, you can't do that because you don't have the, you're not complying with certain bylaws, and you're not, the food. How do we know that food you're serving has been stringently tested to see if it's, so all that kind of bullshit.
And there's another thing when you have the state responsible for trash collection, all the food that's getting thrown away from supermarkets and things like that. And maybe I think in France or something like that, they brought in a law saying, oh, supermarkets have to donate their money, but that would probably, donate their unused food, but that would probably end up happening on a free market anyway, because if you're not going to sell that food at a knockdown rate, the trash disposal company, anything that you throw away that is valuable, they're going to find someone that they can shift it onto, you know, because that keeps their costs low, because they don't need to find a way of disposing that, and whether it goes to a farm for pigs for fertilizer, or whether it goes to charities that are local. That's how the trash disposal, the private trash disposal company, keeps their costs down, which is to find creative ways of disposing of things. And if the supermarkets decide to spray it with something so that it's inedible, as they have been accused of doing in the past, or mushing it all together, well, then they'll have to pay more money. So they'll want to get it disposed of. So they'll want to keep their costs down. And I think that on such a free market, we'll see a lot less food wastage, and you wouldn't need to worry too much about people going hungry, certainly.
Okay, here's a question. If somebody's incarcerated by the government, and you're put in a prison, does the government have a duty to feed you then? Well,
I would say they do, because they're basically, you've not got the capacity to feed yourself unless they're giving you the opportunity. They basically held you in hiatus, and they're not giving you the capacity to feed yourself. So if there's a way that you can work for your supper and you've got a couple of options for doing that, then perhaps if you don't pitch in, then you don't get fed. Right. But when you're under duress, it's like, you know, if you had a broken leg and you were staying here and you couldn't move, and I just left you in my room and didn't feed you for a few days, I'd basically be guilty of neglect.
So you think that while you're incarcerated by the government, or while you've been looked after by a state institution, they have a basic duty, but they don't have to give you steak. They don't have to, you know.
But likewise, you know, if you've got a child that you've chosen to have that child and you neglect to feed them and starve them to death, you're culpable, because they can't do anything to get food themselves.
Well, that's kind of different in a way, because with a kid, I mean, it hasn't done anything wrong. It's just been born. I'm assuming that the person who's been incarcerated has been incarcerated because they've committed a crime. They've interfered with the individual rights of somebody else to such a degree that they deserve incarceration. Is it incumbent upon the institution to feed them, or should they be saying, well, look, this person that we've incarcerated has got a family, and if they want to feed them, they're going to have to bring food to the jail, or they're going to have to pay.
That's an interesting.
Because I think that's how it used to work. I mean, I think back in the bad old days, you know, people just get through in a dungeon or whatever. I think you got basic bread and water, and you got basic sustenance, and if you wanted to eat anything else, then your family or whatever had to bring in food for you to eat.
I hear you. So I'm interested to hear what other people who are watching think.
Yeah, our other two viewers, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are. And we're keen to get your viewpoint, and we'll try and answer any questions that you have. Okay, well, moving on from the right to food to possibly the right to medical treatment. I was reading in today's I newspaper. Again, I don't really have any particular preference for this newspaper, other than it's pretty cheap and it's concise. So in their health section, it's to do with somebody help me out here. I don't know how you're going to do it, but is it Pfizer or is it Pfizer?
I think it's Pfizer.
Is it Pfizer? Pfizer. Anyway, okay, so we'll call it Pfizer until somebody else. Pfizer's is different. Pfizer hit with record fine for hiking cost of NHS epilepsy drug by 2,600%. Okay, and the US drugs giant was fined a record $84.2 million by competition watchdogs yesterday for overcharging the NHS for anti-epilepsy medicine prescribed to thousands of patients. The Competition and Markets Authority
Wow.
Who knew about them?
Competition and Markets Authority.
Yeah, it's only because if only there was some centralised body funded by the taxpayer who could make decisions about market choices
and make free markets more free.
Yeah, exactly, and make them work better. Because you wouldn't know how to compete with the guy next to you if the government didn't tell you exactly how. So anyway, the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, also fined Pfizer's UK distributor Pfine Pharma $5.2 million for increasing the cost of the drug by 2,600% overnight in 2012. NH spending on phenytoin sodium capsules used by 48,000 UK patients rose from 2 million a year in 2012 to about 50 million in 2013. The CMA said the companies had abused their dominant position in the pharmaceuticals market and broken competition law. UK prices for the drug were many times higher than in Europe, the regulator found. Which begged, didn't they just buy it from Europe? But anyway, I mean, I'll go on a bit here, but you get the basic idea. What do you have to say about this there, Mr. Sammeroff?
Well, it's such a complicated topic from a libertarian perspective, because the thing is, once you understand the NAP, the non-aggression principle, thou shalt not hit anyone, take their stuff, defraud them, get them to act under false pretenses, then you can make sense about the world in terms of, is coercion involved or not? Whereas this is such a mind fuck of voluntary and non-voluntary. The NHS is not a voluntary institution, people. It's funded at the point of a gun through the tax system. Now, you may well think that's justified, but it does complicate, who the issue of who's got rights here. I mean, they said this corporation has been fined for hiking up the cost of drugs, but on one hand, the government's fining them. On the other hand, they've given them special privileges. They've given them the privilege of having patents on those drugs. Patents are not a free market phenomenon. They're created by government. So it's like, and also, how's the fine going to harm the people responsible for profiteering?
Just quickly, right, to put this in perspective, if the fines imposed on the two firms are upheld by the Competition Tribunal, Pfizer's penalty would equate to less than 5 days' profit for the multinational, which earned more than 7.7 billion last year. It's not as if Mr. Pfizer, whoever he is, goes under his mattress and takes out a big wad of notes and says, God damn it, I've got to pay off these CMA twats. He's just going to either shed workers or, worse still, hike up the price of his product gradually and across the board so that it's covered, and you, the consumer, will end up paying the fine.
Yeah, the consumer pays the fine, the workers pay the fine, and okay, if the shareholders pay a portion of the fine, that money isn't just dead air. That's money that would otherwise go into investing in that business or investing in another business that's going to produce things. So if people commit a crime in a corporation, the corporation shouldn't get fined. There should be investigation into who's responsible, and those individuals should have to be personally liable. Now, what those individuals could do is go to a bank and get insurance or against that liability, but ultimately, fining a corporation is not a solution. Okay, you might think, well, if it's only 5 days profits, that's not enough, that's not much, but you don't actually understand what goes into making that profit. I mean, most people don't. People think that when they see, oh, this company's making hundreds of millions or billions in profit, they don't see the difference between their revenue and their profit. That profit might only be 20% of their total revenue. You think if you shoplift out of the supermarket, you think, well, it's a great big corporation, they're not really losing that much money. But the truth is that supermarket might be running a 1 or 2 pence profit on many items. And the reason why they make such a big profit is because they're selling so many items. So when you nick £25 worth of shopping, that actually is a much bigger expense to the supermarket than you think. And shoplifting in supermarkets actually costs the consumer significant millions every year. And it's the same with these kinds of fines. I was just trying to get some details up on the price of drugs. So do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, it's just the problem when you have a state monopoly like the NHS in bed with big pharmaceuticals. I mean, these big companies enter into tenders with the NHS, and it's not really that competitive. There's all sorts of lobbying goes on that gives them preferential treatment. I mean, I know someone who provides paint for the NHS in Scotland, right? Lots of it. And the person concerned doesn't really make paint. He just buys it from someone else,
right.
Puts his own labels on it, and gets a markup. What's the deal there? That doesn't seem. I mean, I really don't know what's going on there. And I smell a giant rat when the NHS starts to get into bed with companies like big tobacco companies to make e-cigarettes.
Right.
Now, you may think that e-cigarettes, and the NHS may think that e-cigarettes are the way to go to wean people off cigarettes. I don't know what the empirical evidence for that is. I suppose it's up for argument. But let's say for a minute, give them an argument and say that is the way to go. Well, if you really think that e-cigarettes are the way to go, why are you bringing in one company to give
preferential treatment?
Why not just give people vouchers and let them buy their own e-cigarettes from wherever the cheapest place they can get them?
It's cronyism.
Yeah, absolutely. So what have you got for us there?
Well, this is actually for America, and the per capita prescription drug spending in the United States exceeds that of all countries, and it's $858 per head is spent on prescription drugs in America, which is more than twice the average of $400 for 19 other industrialized nations. And the thing is that this study found that the most important factor allowing manufacturers to set high drug prices, which is why it's relevant to us here, was market exclusivity.
Right.
In other words, protected monopoly rights of companies to sell those drugs, which were awarded to them in America by the Food and Drug Administration. And I guess and patents. So we've got a similar situation here where there really is a pharmaceutical industrial complex, and their interests aren't aligned with the interests of the consumer. I mean, supposing I get a drug and I get a side effect, and then the doctor prescribes me more drugs for my side effect, that's a boon to the pharmaceutical companies. So it's not like if the pharmaceutical companies stand to gain from people being sick in this system. Actually.
Yeah, it's not a healthcare system; it's a sick care system.
It's a sick care system. It's if you had a free market system where you paid for healthcare all year round, and then you received that care when you needed it, and your insurance company and your doctors had the incentive to keep you well, then the pharmaceutical companies would start to want to create the best drugs with the least number of side effects, because they're actually out of pocket when they're giving you drugs. Instead, the more sick you are, the more money the system's making. So, I mean, again, we could do a whole topic on healthcare versus sick care one day if people are interested.
Yeah, and incentives on doctors to prescribe drugs for children and for behavioural problems, because there's incentive fines to do so. Just could you quickly tell us? I mean, there's some people out there might be going, hang on a minute, America's spending. But surely America is a free market, isn't that what we hear all the time? That America is a privatized healthcare system, unlike the NHS.
Well, America does have a private system of healthcare, but it is by no means a free market in healthcare. A free market in healthcare would mean that there's a direct transaction between the issuer of healthcare and the consumer. Now, 50% of healthcare spending, I believe, in America is by the government, so that's already a red light. But what's more, there's massive restrictions on the supply of healthcare in America. In many states, I think in 19 states, it's illegal. They're limited to only having one medical school. And what do we know about supply and demand? The less medical practitioners there are, the higher the cost of healthcare. Every year, thousands and thousands and thousands of applicants who want to go to medical school are denied. And that creates a bottleneck in supply. In many cases, you're not just allowed to build a hospital unless you go ahead of a committee of big hospital administrators and demonstrate that the community needs this hospital and that you're willing to fund it all on your own. And the people on the committee are going to be officials from the other hospitals
that you're going to be competing with.
Okay. So there's massive restrictions in the supply of healthcare. There's massive restrictions even on the supply of. Oh, here's an interesting fact: the Association of American Medical Colleges warned that the USA could be short of 150,000 doctors by 2025 if graduation rates did not change. Meanwhile, 19 states are limited to only having one medical school. What's more, everything a doctor does doesn't require 7 years of training, but the law requires everyone to have at least 7 years of training to do it. So the obvious solution is to allow doctor surgeries and clinics and hospitals to train their own assistants so they can delegate responsibilities to lower skilled staff and keep specialists. I just want to mention one more point on that, which is that even when it comes to insurance, there's laws against getting insurance from a insurance company that isn't in the same state as you, which stops people from bargaining to get the best deal. And all of these things interfere with the free market in healthcare in the USA and make it more expensive than it would otherwise be. As well as many other things.
Who would have thought it? The government getting involved in things can screw it up. If you're, how many viewers do we have at the moment? If you're watching, if you've been listening, could you let us know how it's going, how the sound is? In fact, you've got one viewer apparently. Could you let us know if you can hear us loud and clear? Just I don't know, wave or something.
Hi.
Okay, so we're done with healthcare.
I'm done with healthcare.
We're done with healthcare. Okay, next item on the agenda, again from the newspaper. It's just convenient. We're going to go to good old-fashioned Jew hating.
Jew hatred.
Jew hatred. Yeah, it's all the rage apparently. Again, it never went away, truth be known. But I'll read it out. It's in their court section. Anti-Semitic blogger guilty of harassing Jewish MP. A racist, that's an interesting one in itself, but anyway, a racist internet troll was found guilty yesterday of harassing the MP Luciana Berger in a series of anti-Jewish rants he sent after the jailing of a fellow far-right extremist. Joshua Bonnell-Payne, 24, wrote 5 hate-filled blogs about the Labour MP for Liverpool Wavertree after Garen Helm was sent to prison for 4 weeks in October 2014. Bonnell-Payne denied racially aggravated harassment but was convicted by an Old Bailey jury. Helm, 21, from Merseyside, had admitted posting a picture on Twitter which showed Ms. Berger, 35, with a Holocaust-era Star of David. Why is that always relevant? Why do they always tell you what age somebody is, by the way? They always go like, Ms. Berger, 35. Like, who cares what age she's? But anyway, with a Holocaust-era Star of David on her forehead and the hashtag, quote, Hitler was right, unquote. Wow. Now, over the next 4 months, Bonnell-Payne posted articles online calling her, quote, a dominatrix, and, quote, an evil money grabber, and she had a, quote, deep-rooted hatred of men, unquote. In one, he claimed the number of Jewish Labour MPs was a problem. He illustrated his post with offensive pictures throughout Bonnell Payne of Yeovil, Somerset, was on bail awaiting sentence for claiming on Twitter that several people were paedophiles. Well, I'm sure several people are paedophiles.
Did he mean several specific people?
I think they meant it was several specific people that he said were paedophiles. Giving evidence in person, Ms. Berger inset, it's a wee picture over there. She looks a bit like, I don't know, that woman that was in Lord of the Rings. Ms. Berger said she felt sickened by the blogs and very much under attack. Mr. Justice Spencer adjourned sentencing until a later date. Okay, this guy sounds like a nasty piece of work. Does he deserve to go to jail for, you know, on the evidence, on the, well, yeah, on the evidence, well, he's found guilty of harassing Julia Berger in a series of anti-Jewish rants. Basically, that's it. So I guess that's what he was. He denied racially aggravated harassment.
Well, I mean, if he's calling her names for being a Jew, it sounds like it's racially aggravated. I mean, what's he claiming, that he just generally didn't like her? It seems like he's got a
but whether you racially aggravate, or whether the cause of harassing somebody, right? Okay, can you harass somebody?
Well, do you want to test it out?
I'm constantly harassed by this guy. First of all, what's harassment? Okay, is it physical? Is it verbal? You're not allowed to harass people, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know generally. What difference does it make if I harass you because I like you? I might harass somebody because I like them. You know, I could be a stalker because I actually fallen in love with some woman. Liv Tyler, that was the name of the woman I was trying to think. She looks a bit like that, not as attractive. But there you go. I've said she's not as attractive as Liv Tyler. Is that harassment? I'm not trying to defend the guy in terms of he sounds quite horrible. But I think in the same vein that I defended Anjem Chowdhury on his charges, I don't mean I defended him personally. I wasn't the guy in court giving it mulled, you know, that's why he would have went down. I just mean that I defended his right to say the things that he said. I defend the right of this guy to say horrible things and to place them on Facebook or on Twitter. And
does she not just have the capacity to block him?
Well, you would think that was rather obvious. Just block the guy. But that's what I would say as well, you know. But I mean, okay, if somebody's posting shit through your letterbox, can't you just tape your letterbox up? I mean, I don't know. It's as far as I can see, he never threatened to kill her. He never threatened to do her any harm. Not from the evidence of that article. Maybe the stuff came up in the trial that we're not privy to. But in accordance with what I'm reading from that article, he didn't physically harass her. He didn't say that he was going to kill her. He didn't say he was going to do any harm. There wasn't any rape threats. There was just nasty stuff, calling her, saying that she was a dominatrix. I don't know. Maybe she is a dominatrix. Well, I've got no idea.
Why is that an insult?
Well, this is what brings us on to something else as well. When it talks about he claimed several people, specific people, were paedophiles.
That's surely libelous.
It's libelous under current laws. However, there are some libertarians who would say that, you know, what difference does it make? Why should it be illegal for somebody to say anything about you? You know, if it's criminal, like as paedophilia is, we need to provide evidence. If they can't provide evidence, then I'm not. Should it be a crime in of itself to say something untrue about somebody? I mean, I might say somebody's, somebody smells. You know, Nicola Sturgeon smells of poo. No.
You dance naked with a goat every Sunday night when you do your satanic
For
rituals.
fuck's sake, Antony, I mean, come on, right? I mean, you didn't have to tell everybody in the entire world. I don't know. I mean, you don't have to tell two people in the entire world.
I thought I was making it up. I thought I was harassing you by,
did you? Right? Yeah, okay.
False statements about you.
Well, no, look, my sexual conduct is of no relevance or interest to our non-paying public out there. So, so I mean, it's an interesting question. Should the guy be in the jail?
Well, we were going
clearly under existing laws. He's broken. He's broken the law.
We don't know that yet until he goes up in front of the judge. But essentially, where is the line? Like, where are you not allowed to cross? Because see, if I just stand like this and go, "I'm not touching you," you can't get mad at me. I'm not touching you.
But you kind of don't agree that somebody's got a personal space.
Well, you might very well agree, but I don't agree. I mean, I'm not touching you, so you can't get annoyed at me. You know, when is the line crossed?
Well, I guess. Okay, what would be the circumstances if you sit if you sitting like that and then doing that? Would it be in a public bar, for example?
Right.
So I could say to whoever owns the public bar, "Look, I'm not happy with this person sitting with their hand in their face," and they could go, "Could you stop doing that, or you'll be removed from the premises?" Or he could say, "Well, he's not actually harming you. That's fine." In which case, I could go, "Okay, well, I won't be drinking in this pub anymore because you allow people to get in other people's personal space."
So there's some discernment there. Whereas if you go to me, "Can you please stop that?" I can go, "Well, look, you're in my house, so while you're in my house, I can wave my hand in front of your face as much as I want. Otherwise, you can just go away and I'll do the podcast on my own."
Girlfriend, you can't be doing that. So this leads on to something else. You were talking. Didn't your dad send you some article to do with
about To Kill a? It was actually to do with To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, that article about anti-Semitism is just like playing up identity politics. One article says Jews have a duty to stand with people of color and other people who are being oppressed, and someone else says, well, Jews aren't white and anti-Semitism isn't new in America and has been going on for a long time. And it's like, from my point of view, I really do despise all this playing victim stuff. I mean, okay, if you're personally victimized 100%, you've got every right to it. But claiming victimization because you're a member of a group, right? Okay, I've maybe got some dodgy comments for being from a Jewish background. I'd say over the course of my life, I've probably faced more disadvantages from being short. Now, the same might not be true for my grandparents' families. In fact, horrible things happened in the Polish side of my lineage. But I'm not like claiming victimhood or special privileges or anything like that for that. And I just don't, I hate people grabbing for victimhood based on their identity and membership in a certain group. It's like, sort your shit out. Okay, yeah, I totally accept. In the case of African Americans, it's a very specific case in America, many of whom came from slavery, and perhaps the government has owed some kind of due. But all the problems in Black communities in America are not caused by the state. A lot of them are caused by, say, the huge amounts of fatherlessness and single motherhood in that community, and that community is not particularly self-reflective of that. You don't get Black leaders saying we've got to keep the family together, you've got to stop having children when you're not married, you've got to choose partners better. Now, maybe the state is partially responsible for that. Maybe with minimum wage laws, they've priced Black workers disproportionately out the market, and there is a lot of evidence that
it's directly correlated. As soon as they put it, as every time that the minimum wage goes up, Black unemployment goes up at the same time.
And I accept that, and I think that. But do you think that these community leaders are saying we need to? In that community, do you think that their leaders are saying we really need to lobby the government for lower minimum wages? Probably not. And you know, they really And it's the same for, I think Jews are the most successful ethnic group in America. So obviously, one, they're doing something right, and two, they're not being that badly persecuted in America right now. So
well, it's, I
keep
mean,
on doing whatever you're
yeah.
doing right, you know, Jews in America, and congratulations on your success.
I mean, yeah, okay, I would largely agree with that. I mean, it seems to me that, I mean, you could make an argument that various peoples and at various times in various circumstances have been subject to racism or prejudice. But it seems to be that Jew hatred, let's call it, that has been quite prevalent throughout Eastern and Western Europe, certainly, for centuries. And it obviously after the Holocaust it abated a little bit, but it's, you know, it seems to be coming back. There was the recent row in the Labour Party about anti-Jewish comments, and you know, I can completely understand why certain people within the Jewish community get nervous when these things start to be bandied about. But the point I was going to make is when people start to say, well, you know, like racism is the cause of these of problems within certain communities. Fact of the matter is, Chinese people suffer racism. They don't have the problems within their community that they have in, let's say, Afro-Caribbean communities, and even within black communities, Afro-Caribbean tend to suffer different problems from people from black African background. Japanese people in America, certainly after the Second World War, were discriminated against terribly. A lot of them were interned in concentration camps in America during the war. Yet it didn't stop them, for the vast majority of them after the war, from excelling and you know, and achieving. So the idea, and as you said, and Jews throughout history have been discriminated against, yet it doesn't stop them from being successful and achieving. Now that's clearly not the case across the board. I'm sure out there somewhere there's a Jewish guy who's a complete fuck up, and he hasn't got a job, and he's not a lawyer, and he's not you know, and he's not working for Metro Goldwyn Mayer or whatever, writing scripts. There's probably guys like that, but we're just talking as a general across the board. For the size of their community, they tend to overachieve.
Yes. Yes, and they maybe have some good cultural influence or traditions and things like that. A good work ethic, high expectations, and on average, highly intelligent. But so I don't. So what point are we drawing to here?
Well, we're also did we want to talk about killing a mockingbird?
It's basically about personal responsibility. It's like the world is going to try and sell you this idea that for some reason or another you're a victim, and some people embrace that and love that. And even on the individual level, this ties into the social justice warriors, because if you're a victim, you're entitled to something.
Yeah.
Well, look, you might think that, but it's not a good mindset either for any individual or any community. Any wise person or community will say, what is in our control and what can we do to better ourselves in whatever capacities we can, and what is not in our control, can we try and change it? If we can't try and change it, then can we make the best in a bad condition? And communities who've done that have seemed to excel.
Yeah. So, okay. But just quick, and To Kill a Mockingbird. For those of you who don't know, the famous book by Harper Lee. She recently wrote a prequel.
Did she?
Yeah. After 40 years or 50 years, she wrote a prequel to this story of a small town lawyer, played in the movie by Gregory Peck, as I recall, who takes on the case of a poor black man. I say a poor black man because he was poor, he had no money. I don't mean he was a poor black man.
Although he was,
yeah. He was falsely accused of raping a white woman. That's significant because that was the outrage. And the idea that this small town lawyer would take on the case was, you know, turned people in the town against them. And it's a movie, but it was a book I got at school and I hated it, right? But the reason I hated it was because I was forced to read it. It was part of the curriculum, and I just don't want to read this book. And the kind of person at the time I was had no interest in this. Kind of, it just sounded like more civil rights, schmivel rights to me. But do you like that one? So I mean, I read it later as an adult, and it's a fantastic book, and it's a good story. But they're now removing it from the curriculum in the United States because the book contains racial epithets, racial slurs. I don't know whether it's
along with Huckleberry Finn.
Huckleberry Finn's.
Again, it's like Mark Twain. Yes, people use terms like nigger in his books, but they're never sympathetic. It's never done sympathetically. I love Mark Twain's sensitivity. Do you know? When you read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, his mum gives him a hiding, but she feels really guilty about spanking him. And she actually thinks, she's conflicted. On one hand, she thinks maybe if she did it more, he'd behave better, but she hates doing it. And I feel like that was really ahead of its time. And his, obviously, his treatment of characters who call black people niggers, it's painted in a light of being ignorant. Yeah. And To Kill a Mockingbird is a book about racist
white prejudice against black
and
people.
It's not. Why? What are they trying to shield?
Well, I guess they're trying to shield them from being triggered. Black people are going to be triggered by these words in the books, and I find that's kind of patronising. It's not kind of patronising; it's totally patronising. I mean, what's next? I mean, Shakespeare, because there's anti-Semitic sort of Merchant of Venice. There's certainly anti-Semitism in there. I don't personally think Shakespeare was anti-Semitic. I think it was just straightforward reportage. This is what society was like at this moment in time. This is what it's like now. I think, if anything, personally, I think Shylock comes out of the Merchant of Venice quite well, whereas Antonio and his crew come out like a complete shower of tossers. That's my view of the Merchant. So I don't think it's good when you start to say, look, we don't have these words. Look, people will just friggin' invent new words for people. If you stop kids from using words like, I don't know, you name it, kike, chink, nigger, they're just going to think up new words in order to insult people or to get the better of somebody else. I can remember there was a famous case, that's before I joined the army, but when the British Army were in the Falklands, they used to refer to the Falkland Islanders in a derogatory manner. The general feeling they were a bit thick and insular and backward, and they wore these little black woolly hats, and they all reminded them of a character from a soap opera, an afternoon soap opera called Crossroads, and there was a guy on there who was a bit of a simpleton called Benny, so they just called the Falkland Islanders Bennies. Benny this, Benny that, and like somebody obviously complained, and then an edict came down from on high that they were to be stopped. They were to stop calling them Bennies. Please don't call the locals Bennies; it's insulting. So they stopped calling them Bennies, and they called them Stills. And they said, "Why do you call them Stills?" And it was because they're still fucking Bennies, right? So it doesn't matter what word, if you just whatever word you get rid of, they'll find a way around it. If somebody wants to be derogatory, if somebody wants to insult them, if somebody wants to be nasty, they'll find a way of doing it. And as soon as you start banning words, I might agree that these words are horrible, but there's all sorts of other words out there. Bastard's horrible. You can call somebody a bastard, a twat, a cunt. We do this regularly. I call him a twat regularly, and it's not very nice, but we do it. And if you ban those words, what else? What other words do you decide are unacceptable and you can't use them? I think it's a ludicrous road to go down. And certainly government shouldn't be doing it. But as far as with the Kill a Mockingbird thing, to me, it speaks of a bigger problem with public schools rather than anything else. And
this idea that kids are so fragile that they need to be shielded from the realities of history and the real world. It's a really bad attitude to take, because humans are anti-fragile to a degree. You know, you need to actually be exposed to things, or that might be a bit uncomfortable, then that increases your level of comfort by, okay, I'm shocked, then I need to recover. Just like going to the gym, you know, if you want to be ripped, you can't do it all in one day. You need to go, work out, rest, do the same. And it's the same in the field of mental health. If you've got anxiety or anything like that, you can become less anxious, but you can't do it all in one day. You need to experience it, then you need to recover, then experience it and recover, experience, recover, and then that builds resilience. I dare say that it's time to wrap up, as we've been going.
Can we have a quick look and see if we'll get any comments before we go?
Don't have any comments today. You guys are pretty quiet.
Lazy people that we have for viewers, all three of you. But
we'll probably be hitting it around this time next week as well. So please tune in for another episode of the Scottish Liberty Podcast.
Yeah.
Until
in
then,
the meantime, don't be righty
or lefty. Be libertarians.